The story begins on the sun-baked island of Sardinia, where ancient whispers drift through olive groves and forgotten tombs. The narrator describes how Michael Hayes, a seasoned documentary researcher, arrives to investigate strange rumors of gigantic skeletons unearthed in remote burial sites. They called them myths, Michael says quietly, brushing dust from a carved stone. But myths often begin with something real. Dr. Emily Carter joins him, her voice steady but curious. She explains that Sardinia's history is layered: Nuragic towers, Phoenician ruins, and unexplained chambers deep below. Professor Lucia Moretti provides cautious insight, warning that legend and fact often blend here. Local guide Marco De Luca smiles faintly, recalling tales his grandfather told about bones larger than any man's. As dusk falls, the team senses the air growing heavy with unspoken truths. Beneath the stones, something ancient waits, patient and colossal. Morning breaks over the excavation site. Michael records an introduction for viewers, his tone steady yet intrigued. "We stand on land where history and legend collide," he says. Emily studies the soil layers, explaining that the remains could predate known civilizations. Lucia compares these finds to myths of the Nephilim and Titans, while Marco reminds them that villagers still whisper warnings about disturbing the Great Ones. As the camera pans across the field, something glints, a fragment, larger than expected. Emily kneels to examine it, her expression caught between disbelief and awe. Later that day, Emily and Lucia compare measurements inside the research tent. "These proportions don't fit any known hominid," Lucia murmurs. Michael leans over the table, camera in hand, capturing every detail. Marco watches from outside, uneasy. The narrator reflects on the tension between belief and skepticism, how discovery can shift from revelation to controversy in an instant. Emily frowns, realizing the implications. If is genuine, she says quietly. "We're standing on the edge of rewriting history." Night settles. The site feels alive with whispers. Marco insists he hears movement near the tomb's entrance. Michael dismisses it as wind, yet a faint rumble echoes from below. Lucia clutches her pendant, muttering an old Sardinian proverb about the giants who once ruled the island. Emily urges calm, but unease seeps through the team like a chill. Sometimes, the narrator says, truth awakens before we're ready to face it. Before dawn, the team gathers once more. Michael prepares his notes. Emily steadies the tools. Lucia whispers a silent prayer. The camera focuses on the entrance now cleared of debris. "This is where history hides," Michael says, voice trembling slightly. With a final glance, they step into the darkness, unaware that their first discovery will be far more than bones. It will be a story buried by time itself. As the first beams of light strike the tomb's entrance, Emily and Michael step inside, their flashlights revealing an eerie chamber carved with intricate markings. The narrator describes the air: thick, cold, and heavy with age. Emily's voice trembles slightly as she whispers, "These carvings, they tell stories of beings taller than men." Michael kneels, measuring a massive femur embedded in clay. "This bone is almost twice human length," he murmurs. Lucia, her notebook open, compares the carving patterns to ancient myths of Sardinian giants known as the Giganti da Monte Prama. Marco keeps a cautious distance, muttering that some things were buried for a reason. The camera captures their unease as they realize that what they have found may challenge the very boundaries of accepted science. Hours later, the team gathers outside to examine their findings. Emily carefully wraps the bone fragment for preservation, while Michael reviews the footage. Lucia scrolls through reference texts, searching for parallels. "Archaeologists found something similar decades ago," she recalls, "but it vanished from records." The narrator explains that reports of giant remains in Sardinia date back to the 19th century, yet official documentation remains scarce. Marco frowns, saying locals once spoke of government men taking artifacts away in secrecy. Michael looks skeptical, but intrigued, sensing the layers of mystery deepening around their discovery. That evening, Michael conducts an on-camera reflection for viewers. Every discovery invites debate, he says, standing before the excavation site. But what if this evidence defies explanation? Emily joins him, emphasizing that the structure and density of the bone appear beyond human scale. Lucia interjects, warning that without peer review and verification, such claims will be dismissed. The narrator notes the tension between curiosity and caution, between truth and credibility. Marco gazes toward the hills, whispering, "Giants don't like to be disturbed." His words linger, unsettling even the skeptics. Late that night, Emily analyzes the bone sample under a portable microscope inside the tent. Lucia observes closely, her expression unreadable. "It's not a hoax," Emily murmurs. "Organic structure, preserved calcium. It's real." Michael records the moment quietly, aware of its gravity. The narrator explains how such findings often vanish into obscurity once larger institutions intervene. Marco's voice cuts through the silence. "They'll come for it," he says, eyes dark with fear. A gust of wind shakes the tent, as if echoing his warning. The next morning, tension peaks when two unfamiliar men arrive claiming to represent a research institute. They question the team aggressively about their findings. Michael films discreetly, noting their avoidance of official identification. Emily demands proof of authority, but the men only smile and warn her not to publish premature conclusions. Lucia senses danger, pulling Marco aside. "We're standing between history and those who want it forgotten," she whispers. The narrator closes the act with a chilling reflection. In Sardinia, truth is not only buried, it is guarded. The morning after the confrontation, tension still lingers across the camp. The narrator describes the heavy silence as Emily replays the footage of the mysterious men, her expression thoughtful, yet uneasy. Michael reviews his notes, determined to piece together the truth. Lucia flips through ancient manuscripts, referencing the Gigante di Monte Prama, while Marco shares local legends that speak of towering beings cast down by divine wrath. Emily muses aloud, "Maybe myths hold more truth than we realize." Michael glances at her, replying, "Or maybe we've just forgotten how to listen." The wind howls across the stones, carrying echoes of stories too old to be fully remembered. That afternoon, Lucia gathers the team under a canopy. She opens a weathered book, showing ancient drawings of colossal human figures alongside smaller tribes. These texts describe beings who taught early men how to build, to carve, to think. She explains. Michael's brow furrows. "So, gods or teachers?" he asks. Lucia smiles faintly. "Maybe both." Emily connects these depictions with local stone structures known as giants' tombs. The narrator adds that countless megalithic sites across Sardinia still baffle archaeologists, too large, too precise for the tools of their time. Marco listens, his expression caught between fear and wonder. As night descends, the team sits around a small campfire. Flames flicker across tired faces. The narrator reflects on how myths may preserve fragments of forgotten truth. Marco recounts a chilling tale his grandmother once told, that giants were punished for revealing forbidden knowledge to humans. Emily listens quietly, then says, "Maybe punishment is just another word for fear of the unknown." Michael adds, "Or fear of being wrong." Lucia's eyes glint in the firelight as she murmurs, "Truth never hides forever, it waits." The wind rises again, and for a brief moment, the flames bend toward the ancient hills, as if drawn by unseen breath. The next morning, Emily inspects a set of carvings recently unearthed near the tomb. The figures depict humans alongside beings twice their size, These proportions can't be symbolic, she says. Lucia, however, reminds her that symbolism runs deep in ancient art. Michael captures close-ups of the carvings while narrating for his audience. Evidence or imagination? The line grows thin when history fades. Marco steps closer, touching one of the giant figures. My grandfather said they were protectors, he whispers. Emily replies, then maybe they're protecting something even now. Later that day, a storm brews over the hills. The narrator describes lightning illuminating the dig site as the team debates what to do next. Emily insists they continue despite the weather, but Lucia hesitates, warning that the soil could collapse. We've already stirred something older than our science, she says. Marco nods nervously, whispering an old Sardinian prayer. Michael, determined, declares, we finish what we started. The rain begins to fall, washing over the ancient stones, each drop echoing like a heartbeat beneath the earth. The storm clears by morning, leaving behind drenched soil and shattered tools. The team regroups around the site, weary but resolute. The narrator explains that word of their discovery has spread beyond Sardinia, drawing attention from scientists, skeptics, and enthusiasts worldwide. Emily receives messages from colleagues urging her to secure the samples. Michael plans interviews with local historians, hoping to validate their findings. Lucia warns that publicity could attract unwanted interference. Marco, silent, keeps glancing at the tomb's dark entrance, uneasy as if something within still watches them. We opened a door, Emily says quietly. Now we must walk through it. Later that day, Michael interviews a retired archaeologist who recalls rumors from the 1970s of bones hidden in private collections. No records, no photos, the man says, but they existed. The narrator explains how many claims about giants were dismissed for lack of evidence, often branded as hoaxes. Emily listens, conflicted between scientific caution and growing curiosity. Lucia takes notes, whispering, history has gaps that reason alone can't fill. Marco records the conversation quietly, ensuring every word survives beyond memory. That evening, the team revisits their findings under better lighting. Emily remeasures the bone fragments, confirming proportions far exceeding modern human anatomy. It's impossible, she whispers. Michael films her analysis, narrating that the bone's cellular density suggests an unknown evolutionary pattern. Lucia cross-references her data with European fossil records, unable to find a match. Marco looks uneasy, muttering that the bones may not belong to men at all. The narrator describes the air growing tense as fact and legend collide under the microscope's cold glow. The next day, Emily contacts a genetic lab overseas to request DNA sequencing. If this is authentic, she says, it'll redefine human history. Michael records her transmission as static cuts through the radio. Lucia listens, concerned, questioning whether science is ready for such proof. Marco interrupts, saying that disturbing the dead brings misfortune. The narrator observes that belief and logic are at war within the group, one seeking answers, the other fearing consequences. Emily remains firm. Science doesn't stop for superstition, she says. Yet, as she speaks, the tomb door creaks open slightly from the wind as if the island itself were listening. By evening, the team receives an encrypted message, an anonymous source claiming to have seen photos of identical bones stored in a restricted vault in Cagliari. Michael reads it aloud, his voice trembling slightly. They're hiding something bigger than all of us, Lucia murmurs. Emily decides to travel there, determined to uncover the truth. Marco hesitates, saying he'll stay to guard the site. The narrator closes the act with the image of Emily's determined face lit by fading firelight. When science seeks the forbidden, the voice says softly, the unknown always answers. Emily and Michael travel to Cagliari, under overcast skies. The narrator describes the contrast between the city's modern streets and its hidden past. Inside an old museum archive, they meet a nervous curator who hesitates before unlocking a restricted section. "These artifacts aren't supposed to exist," he whispers. Emily's heart races as she spots crates, labeled only with dates and vague codes. Michael films quietly, his camera capturing dust motes swirling in pale light. When the crate opens, both stare in disbelief. A skull larger than any human's rests within. "This can't be real," Emily breathes. The curator looks away, muttering, "Some truths aren't meant to be unearthed." The narrator explains that Emily secretly collects DNA samples for testing, storing them in sealed containers. Michael records her quietly, aware that revealing this could cost them access. "If we don't take proof, they'll erase this," she says. Outside, thunder rumbles over the harbor. Lucia calls through radio static, warning them to return immediately. The site has been visited by unknown men. Emily hesitates but decides to stay one more night. "The truth's already out there," she tells Michael. "We just need the courage to face it." Back at the excavation site, Lucia and Marco wait nervously. The narrator describes their fear growing as headlights approach from the distance. Two vehicles stop near the tents, engines idling. Marco whispers, "They're not here to help." Lucia hides the research logs beneath loose stones. Footsteps echo outside. "Stay quiet," she murmurs. The shadows move slowly, methodically. When the lights finally vanish, only the sound of the wind remains. "Whatever we found," Lucia says softly, "they already know we saw it." The next day, the team reunites. Emily brings the samples, her hands trembling with exhaustion. Michael sets up the camera to document everything. Lucia warns that the files they stored online have disappeared overnight. "Deleted or hidden," she mutters. The narrator explains how discoveries that challenge accepted history often face silent erasure. Marco speaks quietly. "You can't bury the truth forever." Emily looks toward the horizon. "Then we'll keep digging," she says. For a moment, hope and defiance replace fear. That night, under a sky thick with stars, Michael records his final statement for viewers. "We came to find evidence," he says, "but what we found were questions that reach beyond bones." Emily sits beside him, silent but resolute. Lucia closes her journal, her eyes reflecting both fear and pride. Marco stirs the campfire, whispering a local blessing for protection. The narrator ends softly. "Some discoveries rewrite history. Others remind us how little we truly know." As the fire dims, their silhouettes fade into the Sardinian night, guardians of a secret too vast to contain. Weeks later, the team returns home, their minds heavy with unanswered questions. The narrator explains that Emily has sent the genetic samples to independent labs under coded identities. "If the results come back inconclusive," Michael says, "the mystery deepens." Lucia begins compiling their research into a private archive, fearing public release would only invite suppression. Marco returns to his village, where elders warn him to forget what he saw. Emily, unable to rest, stares at satellite maps of Sardinia, searching for other unexplored sites. "The story isn't over," she murmurs. The narrator reflects that truth often hides in plain sight, waiting for those brave enough to seek it again. The narrator recounts how news of the Sardinia Giants leaks online. Anonymous videos surface showing fragments of the skull and bones they found. Emily denies posting them, yet their footage spreads rapidly. Michael watches the clips replayed on international news, whispering, "They've taken our story." Lucia warns that misinformation could bury the truth deeper than any government could. Marco sends a brief message. "The old tombs are being sealed." Emily looks out her window and whispers, Then history is sealing itself. Emily receives an anonymous email with encrypted coordinates and the words, "There are more." The narrator explains how obsession replaces exhaustion. She contacts Lucia and Michael, who reluctantly agree to meet again. "We risk everything," Lucia warns, "but silence is a heavier burden." Michael nods, packing his camera once more. Marco refuses at first, but later sends his blessing, saying he'll keep watch from afar. Emily closes her laptop and says, "Let's finish what we started." The decision reignites a spark of determination in each of them, fragile but unstoppable. Days later, the team arrives at a remote region of Sardinia known for ancient monoliths. The narrator describes the landscape, vast plains of stone and silence. Emily leads the group toward a partially buried ruin visible only through drone scans. "If giants walked here," she says, "this might be where they fell." Michael documents every step, his narration steady but filled with awe. Lucia reads an inscription carved in an archaic tongue, its meaning lost to time. The air feels charged, as if history itself stirs beneath their feet. At sunset, Emily kneels before the entrance of the newly discovered chamber. "This place feels alive," she whispers. Lucia lights a lantern, revealing carvings of colossal beings kneeling before the sky. Michael films silently, his voice trembling in the background. "Every legend starts somewhere," he says. The narrator concludes that the legacy of these giants may never be fully understood, yet their presence endures in every unanswered question and every buried truth. As the light fades, Emily touches the stone and smiles faint. "Maybe," she says, "they wanted to be remembered." The dawn over Sardinia feels different now. Still heavy, as if the island itself guards a secret. The narrator explains that Emily and Michael prepare their final report while Lucia translates the new inscriptions they found. "These markings," Lucia says softly, "describe a covenant between skyborn beings and early humans." Michael shakes his head, struggling to reconcile myth and science. "Then history isn't just what we dig up," he says. "It's what we've forgotten to believe." Emily gazes toward the horizon where the ruins fade into light. "Truth doesn't need acceptance," she replies. "It only needs to exist." The team knows this may be their last collaboration, but their discovery has already shifted the ground beneath them. Days later, Emily receives the genetic report. The narrator describes her trembling hands as she opens it. Results indicate an anomaly in the DNA sequence, something not found in modern or ancient human databases. Michael reads over her shoulder, whispering, "This changes everything." Lucia warns, "If this goes public, they'll discredit us before they investigate." Emily's expression turns resolute. "Then we show the world anyway." The narrator pauses as the camera lingers on the printed data, hinting at a revelation, both wondrous and terrifying. Michael uploads their footage and data to encrypted servers, his narration steady but emotional. "If we disappear," he says, "the truth won't." The narrator reflects on humanity's uneasy relationship with knowledge, how fear often follows discovery. Lucia prays quietly, asking forgiveness for revealing what others bury. Emily stares into the camera, declaring, "History belongs to everyone, not just those who control it." Her words echo through the static as the files begin to transfer. The storm outside rises again, as if nature itself responds. A week later, the findings leak online under anonymous sources. The narrator describes the explosion of debate. Some call it groundbreaking, others call it fraud. Scientists argue, believers rejoice, and skeptics demand proof. Emily watches from her apartment, the glow of the screen reflected in her eyes. "It's not about belief anymore," she whispers. "It's about courage." Michael's voiceover cuts in. When evidence challenges comfort, people look away. But the truth never leaves. It waits. Lucia mails her handwritten journals to a trusted archivist, ensuring the record will survive long after the noise fades. Months later, the narrator closes the story with a haunting calm. The site in Sardinia has been sealed and classified as protected ground. Tourists pass unaware of what once lay beneath. Emily teaches now, urging students to question, not accept. Michael continues his documentaries, each film carrying echoes of what they found. Lucia's journals rest in an archive marked unverified, though her words speak louder than any label. As the camera pans over the island one last time, the narrator concludes, maybe the giants never vanished. They live on in every mystery we refuse to stop asking. The wind moves through the ruins, whispering of truth, faith, and the endless hunger to understand.